Vanavond in Waakhond op Sky TV.
Een exclusief interview met de leider van de delegatie van de Islamic Development Bank, die op bezoek is in Suriname, om de strategische ontwikkelingsvisie van ons land te bespreken. En het verhaal achter het succes van Facebook, dat als een heel bescheiden project begonnen is door Mark Zuckerberg. Op dit moment is in de Republiek Suriname een missie van de Islamic Development Bank. In de afgelopen weken is er heel wat geweest in het nieuws over deze bank. De ISDB zou maar liefst 1,8 miljard US-dollar in haar portfolio hebben om te lenen aan de Republiek Suriname. Maar zijn wij er wel klaar voor? Hebben we genoeg projecten om in te dienen? En hoe zorgen we ervoor dat het geld op de juiste plaats terechtkomt? Genoeg vragen om te stellen aan de heer Sayed Aqa, vicepresident Country Programming and Cooperations, die vandaag exclusief voor Waakhond in de People Studios is. Mr. Aqa, welcome to the studios and welcome in the Republic of Suriname. How has your visit up to now been?
Very good. Thank you very much for having me, and I'm quite pleased to be in the Republic of Suriname, one of our beautiful and very strong member countries. We have had a very good start of visit. We have had meetings with a number of senior officials in the government, and we have discussed at the strategic level our engagement and future programming in the country. And we will continue this dialogue with the aim of contributing to the economic and social development of Suriname.
The current mission, Mr. Aqa, what kind of mission is this?
Well, this is what we call a policy dialogue mission, which is more at the strategic level, at the higher level. We are discussing where in areas of work that the Islamic Development Bank can contribute to the development of the country. Suriname is now going through the finalization of its development plan, and we want to understand the development plan and then align our support in line with that development plan. Because the Islamic Development Bank is what we call a demand-driven institution, and we respond to the priorities of our member countries. We don't have our own priorities. We come and engage with the policymakers, with the line institutions, with the private sector, and then we learn what are the priorities, and based on that, then we align our support.
Mm-hmm. And the current mission, how many members are in this mission?
Well, the mission is led by myself as the vice president, and it's we rarely go at this level, but since Suriname is an important member country for us, we decided to have this high-level mission. I have my advisor and also the director of the Asia region for the Islamic Development Bank Group. We have the country manager for Suriname with us in the team, and also we have the representative of our trade financing and trade promotion arm, ITFC, with us. But also we represent our other sister organizations in the group, which is our private sector development arm, the ICD, and also the Research and Training Institute, ELTHI, that we are currently working in all those aspects and areas. And also we have a investment and credit insurance arm, ISEC. We represent the whole group, and we hope to have some concrete strategic directions as a result of this mission.
Yes. What are exactly the targets that this mission has and the expectations of this mission? What are you going to do with the information that you gather in communications, in meetings with high-level officials in this country?
Yeah, well, we aim to hear firsthand from the leadership of the country and from the private sector as well, from the line ministries, that what are the key priorities in light of the current sort of economic situations with a lot of the commodity producing countries are going through recently, and most of them are in our member countries. So we want to see how we can help our member countries to bridge the gap and intervene in those strategic areas. This mission is not to discuss detailed projects. We are discussing, the strategic areas. Let's say, for example, the role of private sector in the economy, or the role of agriculture in economy and employment. And then, based on that, then we will align our detailed projects.
Okay. And can you tell us who your counterparts are in this mission?
Well, our main counterpart is the Ministry of Finance. The government has identified the Ministry of Finance as the governor of IDB, who is regularly attending our meetings and making our policies. Suriname has a very active role in our Board of Governors and in setting up our policies, because all of the bank policies are endorsed and approved by the governors. So the Minister of Finance is the key partner in terms of policy making for us. And then we have all the line ministries who are willing to have development projects. For example, currently we are working with the central bank on some regulatory frameworks for the environment of participatory finance, or what we call Islamic finance. Then we have a program currently with the Ministry of Education for establishment of a high quality school, secondary education, and for the technical and vocational training centers. We have an active project with the Ministry of Health for strengthening the health system. But we are also engaged with the private sector discussions and how we can support the private sector.
How did the mission evolve so far?
So far, we are quite pleased with the outcomes of the mission. We had a very important discussion with the strategic planners in the country. We are thankful to the Vice President. We met him yesterday. We had a meeting with the Governor of Central Bank, and our mission is continuing. We will continue our meetings, and as a result of that, so far we believe that we will have a very strong partnership.
Next year, it will be 20 years that there is a relationship between the Islamic Development Bank and the Republic of Suriname. 20 years is a very long period. What are the lessons learned?
Well, the first lesson is that Suriname is a country full of resources, not only natural and mineral resources, but also people. People is, I think, the most important asset of the country. The level of education is quite high. And also we believe, there is a huge potential in agriculture sector, not only in production, but also agribusiness, agro-industries, and agro-economy. We believe this will be a new phase in the diversification of the country, because it will generate jobs and also add value to the products for import and export. So country has huge potentials. That is a very positive news. The other good news is that the system works in the country overall, and that brings stability and brings confidence in the country.
What do you mean that the system works?
I mean the systems of governance works. The basic political will, whether it's on the public domain or on the decision makers, it's there to move towards a more prosperous and developed country. Which is very important. It may not seem important to ordinary people on the street, but it is strategically very important. But there are also challenges. For example, the political will and the will from the people is not enough alone. It has to be enhanced with the capacities. We believe that with additional capacity development and capacity enhancement, because the world is moving, and we have to catch pace all the time. If we left behind, then I think we will be left behind for many years. So capacity in different institutions and ministries, I think, is very important. The capacity to design projects, to plan projects, and to implement projects. We have experienced a number of our projects are going very slow. We want this to be faster because we want the people to benefit. For example, if a hospital project is going for a number of years, then people will not benefit from the hospital or education or others. So that is one area. The other area is, I think it's recognized by the policymakers in the country that the country has relied so much on a single source of revenue, from oil or gold, basically extractive industry. And I think diversification is very key and important. And the government is moving, based on our discussion yesterday, to that direction. So that's the good news. So that's being addressed. The other area is also the role of private sector. And we believe that the environment for private sector investment, the confidence, the regulatory framework can be efficient, it can be more effective. So both domestic investors from Suriname and diaspora, but also investors from outside, from other countries, can have the confidence to come with major investment, because that investment will bring jobs, it will bring create wealth in the country, and I think that business environment is something that we believe can have improvements. But overall, also the alignment of education with the job market. Because that is also very critical in the new economy. Globally, most countries are realizing that what the education institution are producing is not fitting what the job market needs. So you have a lot of educated people, but they cannot find job. But then you have industries that look for employers or employees, but they can't find them. So this mismatch, I think, it's not a problem in Suriname alone, but it's a global phenomenon.
Have you discussed these points with your counterparts in Suriname? Did they acknowledge the fact that some things need to be streamlined more? And what are the steps that are going to be taken on both sides to influence this in a positive way?
Yes, we are pleased that from our discussion so far, the policymakers have recognized these areas, and they are thinking in the new plan to be soon approved, hopefully by the Parliament, will address those issues, and we are quite pleased to see those elements. I mean, a good example is, for example, a lot of groundwork has been done on the business environment for the private sector. However, so far there has been a lot of studies, but those studies now have to be translated into policies, into regulatory environment. So I think the areas are recognized, but we need now to move more towards action, which we are pleased that I think the policymakers are addressing those.
Is there a role for the Islamic Development Bank in this capacity building, this shortage of experts, and the shortage of people who can draft plans, who can calculate the figures, etc., etc. Can the bank play a role in this?
Definitely. I mean, one of our major cross-cutting strategy across our member countries is capacity development. Capacity development is we haven't specified in our work as one sector. It's a cross-cutting sector. And so we can contribute. We have already done some work, for example, with this technical and vocational training centers that we are funding. I think that's the first steps. But also we believe that maybe we can provide training for a national project design, project planning, and project implementation unit that could serve maybe line ministries. I mean, that's our idea, if it's accepted. And we have also training workshops and trainers that we can bring in to work at these sort of high impact areas in enhanced capacities. But at the end of the day, it is the ministries themselves and it's the private sector itself to enhance and to have a more sustainable capacity, because bringing in capacity and replacing local capacity is not a solution. It's not sustainable. So there has to be in different areas local capacity, either at the sort of institution level or at a national level, has to be developed and put in place.
If you can mention a number of the successes and the challenges and the failures within this relationship of the Republic of Suriname and Islamic Development Bank. Can you mention a few?
Well, I mean, the relation is evolving, of course, all the time, and it's improving. The positive messages that the trend is moving up. As I mentioned earlier, we would like to see more implementation capacity strengthened in a number of institutions, because it has two costs to the country if projects are delayed. Our project, when we fund, has some costs that the government has to pay. So the further the projects are delayed, the country pays more money, and we don't want that. As a different institution, as a institution that we are not a financier, we don't consider ourselves as a funding agency. We consider ourselves as a solidarity-based organization among our member countries to enhance their development. So for that reason also, we don't want the country to be burdened with more cost of financing. And secondly, more importantly, is the opportunity cost. If a school is to be developed and implemented, or a dam for that sake, or a power station, in the next 5 years, if it is delayed 7 years, so you lose 2 years of productivity. So this is why I think that's one area that I think needs more attention, and more sort of engagement at the strategic level rather than project focus, because project focus is important, but we have to know the bigger picture, where we want to go with these projects. So link it with the bigger objectives.
One of the largest projects in the country is the academic hospital. Unfortunately, there has been delay there also. What were the reasons of the delay?
Well, I mean, it's too early for me because I've been in the country for 1 day to identify. As we speak, the rest of my team is in the Ministry of Health. We are discussing that, and I believe we can address that delay.
Okay. You mentioned the private sector. One of the key complaints of the private sector in our country is that the government, in particular, doesn't pay enough attention to small and medium-sized enterprises. That the barriers for them to borrow money from the bank and to have the regulatory framework, etc., the support that they need as the drivers for change in the community, that these are weak. What, in concrete sense, is the Islamic Development Bank going to do to facilitate small and medium enterprises in Suriname?
Well, I can't comment on whether their perception or claim is true or not, but what I can say is that from my discussions yesterday, it's very clear that the government is very committed to enhance the role of private sector in the development of the country. The first point after introduction the Vice President raised with us is how we can bring the private sector in to play a positive role in the development of the country. So the good news is that I think the political will and attention is there. What we can do is we are already in discussion with the central bank, and we are thankful that the license has been awarded to the trust bank, to operate as a Islamic bank, fully fledged. And I must clarify, which has been clarified, Islamic bank doesn't mean it's a religious bank or it's for Muslims only. It's the principles of Islamic banking, which is risk sharing with the borrowers. It is based on real economy and real asset back, and it is more inclusive. It is more resilient to shocks that we have seen recently in the global economy because of these links to the real economy. So the trust bank hopefully will be operational very soon, and that will provide a line of finance for the small and medium enterprises. So that is one concrete thing we are already progressing, and hopefully we'll have a concrete operationalization of the trust bank. And we can also have programs on microfinance. which will provide to even a smaller scale industries and home-based enterprises to flourish, as a feeder or a standalone system. Then we can also bring some experiences from our member countries, how they have integrated the private sector in the economy. We have very successful models and examples of countries that transform their economies. For example, Turkey. If you look 15 years ago, what the Turkey economy was and what is it today in the integration of private sector and its role is, now all sort of major hospitals are run by private sector in Turkey, or the airport is operated by private sector. So that is, I think, a good example. Similarly, countries like in the former Soviet republics, because before it was everything state-owned, and they are going through a transformation phase. For instance, in Kazakhstan, they are having a number of successful stories. Malaysia and Indonesia, I think, are very close, also culturally, to Suriname. They have successful examples that can not only transform the private sector, and the private sector here could learn from it, but also it will establish business links. It will establish trade and export and import links between these countries, because one of our aim, as I mentioned earlier, as a solidarity-based organization, is to increase intra-membership trades, businesses, and bring investment, and also help export and import.
As I understand from your explanation, the trust bank, which will operate as a full-fledged Islamic bank, will facilitate that small and medium enterprises can get finance for their projects. Are there certain limitations, like for instance the minimum amount that can be borrowed, or the maximum, and how should these small and medium-sized companies proceed if they want to receive these funds?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have the detail of the operational model of the bank yet, but the main purpose is to provide line of finance for the private sector. How much to what sort of period? Those are the technical details I think the bank will have to work out, and I'm sure they will have products and services that are suitable to the demand in the market.
Okay. You are planning to go to Guyana very soon, and as we know, Guyana has become a member of the Islamic Development Bank recently. What is the scope of the mission to Guyana? Is it the same as here in Suriname?
Well, Guyana is the very new member country. Their membership was finalized this year, and we are quite pleased now to have 2 member countries in this region. So the mission to Ghana is more at a higher level, to have a better understanding of the country and its needs. We have had no operations so far in Guyana because it was not a member country, and how we can also help, maybe some of the lessons learned here in Suriname, that we could implement there, but also to strengthen further. I know at the regional level, Guyana and Suriname have linkages historically, but also how we can play more role to strengthen in linking the economies of Guyana and Suriname, both in terms of not only trade, but also industries in other areas, how we can enhance economic cooperation between Guyana and Suriname.
Does it have advantages for both countries that we are neighboring countries and both members of OIC and ISDB? And can you be concrete on some?
Definitely. I mean, always there are advantages when you have more number of countries. First advantages, I think the needs of the region will be better represented in our board of governors. So now we'll have 2 governors' voices instead of 1. So the needs of the region will be more strongly reflected, but also for us, it brings economy of scale. And when we have programs, projects, or missions, it will be more financially feasible to come more regularly to the region. Because if before we were having a mission every 2 years, now probably we'll come more often to engage and to have a better understanding. These are the benefits, but also to see the potentials of both countries, because in this interconnected world, no country can operate in a silo. So we will explore, how the two countries could complement rather than compete, each other's economy and growth. For example, in the agriculture sector, maybe there are some skills and best practices in Guyana that could be introduced here, or vice versa. You have other strengths, Suriname, that Guyana could benefit from it. So the regional cooperation and regional integration is, I think, a major advantage.
Yeah. There has been some news regarding a bridge over the Quarantine River, which is the river separating Suriname from Guyana. Is this something that could be realized within this framework of the Islamic Development Bank?
Well, it's too early because we don't have any requests, so we haven't looked into the matter. But as an overall policy, interconnectivity is regional integration and regional connectivity is one of our key. The second cross-cutting issue is regional cooperation and interconnectivity. And we have had in many of our member countries helped in that process. For example, currently we are working in the Central Asia region, interconnecting, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India with the Tapi gas pipeline, which is a $10 billion gas pipeline. Of course, we are not the only partner, but we play a major role in that. So these kind of inter-regional connectivity projects is of our interest, and we prioritize. But if the scale is large, we will also look for co-financiers and co-partners.
As a country, you always strive to do better in years ahead, and always you would like to look at other countries which you can learn from. In your perception, which countries are leading within the Islamic Development Bank in such a sense that we, as one of the younger members, can learn from them, that we can see them as a country which can guide us towards more prosperity and more development, and to benefit more from the facilities that the bank offers?
Well, sharing of expertise and experience between member countries is one of our key added value, because different countries go through a journey of development and they learn lessons, they make mistakes, and of course no two countries the same, but the principles will apply. So we are hoping that countries. We have many examples that Suriname could benefit from. I mean, a practical example is the linkages between Malaysia and Suriname on the rice production, which is already, I think, has 2 crops, and it is very successful. We are considering similar exchange of know-how and expertise in the livestock between Suriname and Indonesia, and hopefully that will be as successful as this one. But more at the bigger level, we also want to see how Suriname could benefit from some of our member countries who have been successful in diversifying their economy. Because now the priority of the government is to diversify economy from a single sort of reliance on single source of income to more diversified. And we have examples. I mentioned earlier Turkey. They have, if I may not exaggerate, achieved miracles. With the type of stability and growth that they brought in the economy. Malaysia could be another example that are very successful. Pakistan has a lot of technological advances. They're almost in many areas self-sufficient. They produce locally. So how we can have maybe small and medium enterprises. Similarly, other countries. I mean, countries like even they don't have their full independence, for example, Palestine. No one will think that Palestine could offer to the rest of the world. We had recently an exchange of experience between Palestine and some of our other member countries in how to manage development aid, because Palestine has a very good experience of coordinating development assistance and development aid, and they can offer to other countries. So we will see, what areas in which country has strength that they can share with Suriname. But at the same time, we also would like to take some of the best practices and successful stories from Suriname to other countries as well. So that is our role.
Yeah. If you're talking about capacity building, I think one of the main things about capacity building is also to facilitate that our best brains can study abroad and gain expertise. Does the Islamic Development Bank facilitate, for instance, scholarships to Surinamese students, graduates, postgraduates, etc.?
Yes, we have a scholarship program, which is, I must admit, not very huge, but still there is a program, and it is operating. And we have had students from Suriname in the past, and also we would like to have students from Suriname in the future. But also we have a program in our non-member countries with the Muslim community mainly, but not restricted to that. And in that area, I think one of the things we can explore to work with Suriname is how we can bring some of the best brains that are in other countries, that they have settled either permanently, semi-permanently, or we have modalities of programs that they can come for a certain period of time in a year and then offer their expertise to their home country and then train local capacity. So we have a number of modalities that we will explore in details.
Finally, Mr. Aqa, this is one of the questions I should have asked you in the beginning. This is now your first visit to Suriname. Can you tell us something more about your own professional background and what are the areas that you're mainly interested in?
Sure. Well, I mean, I started I grew up in a farm, so I know the farming life. I did my studies in electric engineering, and then I did a master's degree in business administration. Then I worked with a number of NGOs in rural development, rural rehabilitation programs. Then I was engaged with the international campaign to ban landmines because Afghanistan was one of the countries heavily affected. And thankfully, we successfully managed to ban landmines forever in the world. And as a result of that, our effort was recognized by the Norwegian Nobel Peace Prize Committee in 2007. The campaign was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and I was quite privileged to represent, among other members of the steering committees, the campaign in the 1997 Nobel Peace Prize. Then I joined the United Nations for more than 12 years. I worked in New York for a number of years. Then I was the United Nations representatives in a number of countries prior to joining IDB.
Okay, Mr. Aqa, may I thank you very much for this in-depth interview, and I hope you will have a successful mission in the hours and days ahead, and also your mission to Guyana. And we hope that we may see you very soon back in our country.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
De social media site Facebook is met bijna 2 miljard gebruikers wereldwijd zeer populair en ook in Suriname. In deze reportage een overzicht hoe het allemaal begon, meer dan 12 jaar geleden in de Verenigde Staten van Amerika.
Mark Zuckerberg was a Harvard freshman with a gift for computer programming. Less than a decade later, he is the baby-faced multi-billionaire power broker who rubs shoulders with the president.
My name is Barack Obama, and I'm the guy who got Mark to wear a jacket and tie.
I think most people still haven't really digested the scale of Facebook or how quickly it's grown.
The goal is obviously to get to ubiquity. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg wants everyone to be on this service.
He transformed a dorm room project into the internet's biggest global village. The site now has over 900 million users.
You can't underestimate how driven Mark Zuckerberg really is.
Zuckerberg is just as visionary as Steve Jobs. He's going to prove just as influential as Bill Gates.
But for all that success, Zuckerberg has confronted bitter battles and lawsuits over Facebook's origins.
One, he wanted to control his own thing, and two, if he's going to go against someone, he's going to crush them.
We spent 3 months working with Mark, being essentially led on. We were all blindsided. We had no idea that he was working on a competing product.
He has waged an all-out war on his biggest competitors.
Facebook and Google's relationship is pretty simple. They just don't like each other.
And Zuckerberg has come under fire for pushing the limits on user privacy.
Users have less control over private information. They don't fully know how their information is being shared.
He's not dealing with just a piece of technology. He's dealing with people and their behavior. And in many ways, he's doing it on the fly.
They have amassed this humongous database of information about us because we trusted them. So the question is, should we still trust them?
I think that the goal that we went into it with wasn't to make an online community, but sort of like a mirror for the real community that existed in real life.
Mark Zuckerberg. We think we know him because we've seen his life unfold in the Oscar-winning movie The Social Network. The portrait was unsparing, a super geek, intense, cutthroat, brilliant, and socially crippled.
I don't understand.
Which part?
But was it accurate?
He's always had friends. He's a pretty social guy. I think the last time I checked, 879 friends on Facebook.
This is the real Mark Zuckerberg in rarely seen footage shot at Facebook's first corporate headquarters by young filmmakers in 2005.
What are we celebrating, Mark?
It's got 3 million users.
3 million users.
Yeah.
And how long has Facebook been around?
Not that long. A little more than a year. Like
a little more than a year.
At this point, yeah.
While Zuckerberg pushes the envelope on user privacy, he opted out of participating in this program. In 2004, at the age of 19, he created Facebook. Today, the 28-year-old CEO has accumulated a net worth estimated at $15.5 billion.
Mark's mission from the beginning was about connecting people, and it was clearly based on this theory that if the world were more connected, it would be a better place.
But there's a lot of surprises when you really dig deep into the story of Facebook. The biggest single surprise is the peculiar and tenacious personality of Mark Zuckerberg and the depth of his convictions and his consistency.
Born in 1984, he grew up in the Hudson River town of Dobbs Ferry, a bedroom community north of New York City. David Kirkpatrick spent 2 years researching a book about Zuckerberg and Facebook called The Facebook Effect.
He comes from an unbelievably supportive family in which he's the only son, and he has 3 sisters. So he was kind of the prince, and in fact, I think his parents called him the prince, and he was treated accordingly. So this is a guy without any problem of self-confidence.
Computer savvy from the start, Zuckerberg taught himself the complicated computer language C++, and by 9th grade had created a digital version of the board game Risk. Journalist Jose Antonio Vargas interviewed Zuckerberg for his New Yorker magazine profile.
He actually created a thing called ZuckNet, which is an internal instant messaging system for the family so the computers could talk to each other. I mean, that's kind of the kid he was.
When he got sort of tired of his local high school, he decided to go to Exeter prep school, really because he just wanted more challenge.
It was at the exclusive Exeter Academy that Zuckerberg and his friend Adam D'Angelo created a music website called Synapse.
It was intended to anticipate what your preferences might be, and it was very, very popular. Even before he started Facebook, he was fending off offers from Microsoft and others to buy Synapse for well over $1 million.
Like a tech world version of an all-star athlete, big-name companies wanted to recruit him right out of Exeter. Again, Zuckerberg was unimpressed and chose instead to enter Harvard in 2002, where it wasn't long before he got himself in trouble. Zuckerberg hacked into the school's computers to collect images of students. Nicholas Carlson is deputy editor at BusinessInsider.com.
You can sort of tell that he's a little bit of a troublemaker. He creates something called Face Mash his first year in Harvard, and it's a sort of hot or not for the Harvard community. And then it maintained an entire list of Harvard students and which ones were the most attractive, ranking them by hotness.
Ellen McGirt interviewed Zuckerberg for Fast Company magazine.
Face Mash worked in kind of a little bit of an icky way. It made people upset. Obviously, people felt mocked or exposed, and it was one of the first big experiences that Mark had with the privacy issues of the masses.
Under pressure, Zuckerberg shut down the site. The Harvard Administration Board charged him with breaching security, violating copyrights, and violating individual privacy. But by then, Face Mash was a campus sensation. Zuckerberg had seen his future.
At the same time of getting trouble for building this mischievous web tool, he built a mischievous web tool that was really popular.
I imagine that he had a couple of sleepless nights worrying about how bad this thing was going to be, and was relieved when it all blew over, but was also incredibly curious about what he could then make next. If you're a genius with genius friends sitting in a dorm room, suddenly the world looks like a big, happy, open place if you can just get into that database.
At the time, the technology landscape was changing dramatically. Brad Stone is a senior writer at Bloomberg Businessweek.
The internet was really a much different world back in 2004. Friendster really demonstrates that a social network needs to have technical chops. The site goes down all the time, it's unreliable. MySpace also, it's full of ads, it's very distracting. It also begins to have technical instability.
At Harvard, Zuckerberg met classmate and future business partner Eduardo Saverin. Author Ben Mesrick is one of the few to have interviewed Saverin about the early days of Facebook.
Eduardo met Mark Zuckerberg in an underground Jewish fraternity. The underground scene at Harvard, you know, these were not really fun events. These were kind of strange little social settings, really bad parties, mostly all guys. And so Eduardo and Mark met in this scene, and they became friends pretty quickly because they were both kind of outsiders.
Face Mash got Zuckerberg noticed by three insiders. Upperclassmen building a social networking site called Harvard Connection, Olympic rowers and twins Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss, with partner Divya Narendra.
Harvard Connection was an idea that I'd come up with when I was a junior in college. This was at the end of 2002.
The team had been building the site for nearly a year. Two of their original programmers had moved on, and they desperately needed a new partner.
The three of us are not computer programmers by trade or practice. We did need an actual programmer to write the actual hard lines of code, and we thought Mark was that guy.
The trio reached out to Zuckerberg.
He was enthused, excited, and clearly his eyes were lighting up.
What happened next sparked a furious battle over how Facebook was actually created. The details unfold in email exchanges between Zuckerberg and the Harvard Connection team. At first, Zuckerberg appeared eager.
I read over all the stuff you sent, and it seems like it shouldn't take too long to implement. So we can talk about that after I get all the basic functionality up tomorrow night.
Then, Zuckerberg began to delay the project.
December 4th. Sorry I was unreachable tonight. I just got about 3 of your missed calls. I was working on a problem set. December 10th. The week has been pretty busy thus far, so I haven't gotten a chance to do much work on the site or even think about it really.
Zuckerberg was stalling because he was busy working on a similar social networking site based on Harvard's student directory called the Facebook. He and Saverin partnered to fund it.
Mark came to him and said, you know, you put up $1,000 and we'll launch this site. And, you know, there were no contracts. These were just two kids in a dorm room, really. But that's where it started.
Writer Nicholas Carlson interviewed more than a dozen people involved in the founding of Facebook and found instant messages retrieved from Zuckerberg's computer he said Zuckerberg sent to Saverin. According to Business Insider, the IM suggests Zuckerberg was deliberately misleading the Winklevoss twins.
He says things like, look at this site that I'm working on, Harvard Connection. Haha, they made a mistake. They asked me to do it for them because I'm working on my own Facebook.
We were always under the impression that Mark was working on HarvardConnection.com. There was never an indication from him that he could not do the work, didn't want to do the work, or was working on something identical on the side called the Facebook.
When he met with the Winklevoss brothers the last time, he saw that he probably should tell them that he's been working on a competing product. He sort of conferred about it with friends. But in the end, he said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to blank them. I'm going to blank them in the ear.
On February 4th, 2004, just as he was expected to complete work on their site, Zuckerberg and his friends instead launched the Facebook. The Winklevoss brothers and Narendra found out about it the same way nearly everyone else at Harvard did.
It completely blindsided us. We definitely did not expect that.
Mark wanted to have control over his own project. He saw that they were onto something cool, the Winklevoss brothers, but he saw that he could do something cooler. And so, one, he wanted to control his own thing, and two, if he's going to go against someone, he's going to crush them. And that's what he did.
Mark Zuckerberg's new Harvard-based social networking site, the Facebook, was mired in controversy from the start. Just days after he launched it in February of 2004, the Winklevoss twins and Divya Narendra sent him a letter to cease and desist.
In a nutshell, our complaint against Mark Zuckerberg is fraud, unjust enrichment, and breach of contract.
Zuckerberg responded with a letter denying any wrongdoing, claiming his site was a separate venture and used none of the same code. The Winklevoss twins and Narendra would later appeal a $65 million settlement with Facebook. They lost in federal court, but that settlement could now be worth $200 million. But none of the vicious legal wrangling slowed the incredible momentum of the Facebook.
At that point, my roommates were kind of like, you know, this is pretty cool. Like, I bet this would work at other schools. So we launched it at Columbia, Yale, and Stanford. And within a couple of weeks, each of those three schools also like had thousands of users. So we're like, all right, this is pretty sweet. Like, let's just go all out and see how many schools we can launch this at as quickly as possible.
About this point in time, they started to take meetings with venture capitalists and with bigger advertisers. And this is all kind of Eduardo's doing.
They got a pretty early deal with Visa, and they had a deal with American Express. They had a number of advertisers that came and went. Then record companies started getting interested, and they began to get some pretty good revenue from the music industry.
Enter Sean Parker, who had his own connection to the music business. On a trip to New York, Zuckerberg and his partner, Eduardo Saverin, had dinner with the 24-year-old co-founder of Napster.
A seasoned entrepreneur and a truly creative individual, an extraordinarily interesting person who had worked his way into a network in the Valley that is just to die for, particularly at that point.
For Zuckerberg, Parker was a hero and a role model. Partner Saverin didn't agree.
Eduardo did not think highly of Sean from the very beginning. He thought that Sean was a snake oil salesman, that they didn't need Sean, that Sean talked a big game but was living out of a duffel bag and had been kicked out of 2 companies.
In the summer of 2004, with Saverin remaining on the East Coast, Zuckerberg left Harvard.
We came out to Palo Alto for the summer just to hang out because Palo Alto is kind of this mythical place where, you know, all the startups come from, and got ready to launch it at another 150 schools when the year started.
One of the things that Mark did that was very smart by going to Palo Alto was to actually enter the petri dish of entrepreneurialism, particularly for new technologies.
Zuckerberg and his friends moved into a large frame house with a swimming pool, and he reconnected with Sean Parker, who later became Zuckerberg's roommate.
He was the adult supervision. He's the guy who showed them how things are done in Silicon Valley. He's the one who showed them how to meet investors, how to negotiate with them, who to hire.
Mark has told me stories of just all of the guys coding late at night around dining room tables and eating chicken McNuggets and cereal.
And there's partying going on. Sean Parker is bringing them around to the different kind of cool Silicon Valley hotspots. And meanwhile, the website is growing astronomically fast. I mean, there's a 1 million member party by December of that year.
During this time, Parker gave Zuckerberg some shrewd advice he took to heart.
He sort of looked at him and said, you need to be the founder of this thing, and you need to be the CEO forever. You know, you can't turn this over to investors.
And Mark is able to negotiate a series of increasingly important investment deals that do 2 things. 1, allow him enough operating cash to hire some of the smartest engineers in the business, and 2, help him retain majority control in the company.
But tensions began to grow with Zuckerberg's original partner, Eduardo Saverin, who remained on the East Coast.
Eduardo felt that, he was the business head of the company and he was no longer being treated that way. Mark and Sean were taking meetings all over California. They were meeting with venture capitalists, and they were kind of ignoring Eduardo.
He retaliated.
Eduardo froze the bank accounts to try and get Mark's attention, and Mark and Sean began to sort of figure out a way to build the company without Eduardo.
Zuckerberg responded and froze Saverin out.
Eduardo was removed from the company masthead, and he essentially became a non-entity. He became a non-person. He was thrown out, and he became very upset.
Facebook had 1 million active users on college campuses nationwide, and big money was starting to pour in. Sean Parker, the new president of Facebook, introduced Zuckerberg to Silicon Valley angel investor Peter Thiel, who put $500,000 into the company. Then, in the spring of 2005, the venture capital firm Excel Partners offered Zuckerberg $12.7 million for an 11% stake in the company.
And didn't ask for much control at all. Walking away from that investment, Mark controlled 3 out of 5 board seats.
Which is a bizarre and unprecedented situation to have one individual have absolute, effectively dictatorial control over the disposition and direction of an increasingly giant company.
Overnight, the Excel investment gave Facebook a valuation of $100 million. As Facebook's public profile grew, so did Zuckerberg's control. This time, Sean Parker was edged out. In August of 2005, Parker was arrested for suspicion of cocaine possession. Although not formally charged with a crime and immediately released, it led to his abrupt resignation as president of Facebook.
He was the primary outside face of the company, and it was felt that somebody who was under any kind of a cloud with drugs was not the right guy to be the public face of Facebook. So Mark reluctantly agreed that he ought to leave.
Facebook was growing with remarkable speed, and Zuckerberg moved the company from its frat-like house with a pool to a larger and more conventional space in downtown Palo Alto.
3, 4, 5.
But the college atmosphere remained the same.
One of the things that I do focus on at Facebook is making sure that the culture is very friendly, and that people hang out. In terms of managing this whole process, nothing, nothing. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing,
Even their employee interviews were different. Chris Kelly was brought on in the new position of Chief Privacy Officer to deal with Facebook's increasingly contentious privacy issues, at a time when the entire company numbered only a couple dozen employees.
The first time I met Mark, we climbed out on the roof, out through the window, and did our interview on the roof of what was then a World Wraps. And it was clear he was young, but he had a very sophisticated understanding of what had happened so far and where he wanted to take the company.
Determined to keep Facebook's unusual creative culture alive, all-night hackathons were one way to do it.
We have these hackathons at the company, right, where basically everyone gets together and just hacks on something and builds something all night long. And the only rule is that you aren't allowed to work on at a hackathon what you work on the rest of the time. So people work on crazy stuff.
Hackathons were some of the most kind of creative focus that you could ever imagine in a company. Imagining these incredibly talented engineers coming together for a night and saying, we're going to stay up all night and we're just going to program. And we're gonna pick a project, and we're gonna get it done that night.
It's like, great, make it. We'll prototype it, and there'll be a prototype war, and see who wins. It can be a contentious environment.
Bull, man, they wouldn't be able to get all the way across. No, I disagree. That's bull. We had an argument.
From Mark's point of view, this is where good ideas come from, quickly and efficiently.
Good ideas were flowing. Zuckerberg then made a change that would give Facebook a sudden and dramatic boost, allowing people to identify or tag themselves and their friends in photographs.
That was a huge, huge change that led to massive new use of Facebook, and photos became very rapidly by far the most used part of Facebook and became the single biggest driver of its growth.
That growth continued in one direction, up. According to Facebook's internal tracking, its user base had shot to 5.5 million users in less than 2 years. And media giants were banging on the door. In 2006, Yahoo baited the 22-year-old Zuckerberg with an extraordinary offer, a buyout for $1 billion. Even more extraordinary, Zuckerberg turned them down.
Now, if you are a parent of someone about Mark's age, you're looking at the Yahoo decision and thinking, why did you not take that money?
It's never been about money. If it was, it would have just sold out.
We just felt that doing that and going down that path would not help us build Facebook out to what we thought it could be.
Manasari futuro, nangawanga nunomo, boto no sari.